2 Samuel 1:1-27, through the Bible. Chapter 1. Theme: David mourns the deaths of Saul and Jonathan. In this chapter David mourns the deaths of Saul and Jonathan. The question of who killed Saul may not be answered completely in this chapter, but another suspect is added. A young Amalekite, who came out of the camp of Israel, reported to David the death of Saul and claimed credit for slaying him. David executed the young man for the crime. David's grief over the deaths of Saul and Jonathan is touching, poetic, and dramatic. It is a striking lamentation. Here we are introduced to another suspect in the death of Saul. Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag, it came even to pass on the 3rd day, that, behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent, and earth upon his head. And so it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the earth, and did obeisance. 2 Samuel 1:1-2. This was a dark day in the history of Israel. War and defeat had come to these people because they were out of the will of God. There is a lesson for us in this. At the end of World War II we thought we had brought peace to the world, and we expected to rest on our laurels from then on and to enjoy life in sin, far from God. That, I am sure, is one of the reasons the world has not had a day of peace since the end of World War II. It has been continual war for us ever since. There will be turmoil and warfare for a nation, a people, or an individual who is out of the will of God. There is no peace, saith my God, to the wicked. Isaiah 57:21. Isaiah said that 3 times. I wonder if that might not be applicable to us today. As I have said, it was a dark day for Israel. You can see their position. King Saul was dead. Jonathan and his 3 sons were dead. Israel had lost the battle. The Philistines had taken all the northern area around Galilee, and now they had gained ground in the south. David did not know what had happened in the battle. He and his men had been recovering their own loved ones from the Amalekite marauders. They had been back in Ziklag for 2 days without hearing a word. Finally, a man all disheveled, covered with mud and dirt and wearing torn clothes, stumbled into David's camp. He said he had come from the war. He told David that the Philistines had won the war and that Saul was dead. Then he told David what had happened. And David said unto him, From whence comest thou? And he said unto him, Out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. And David said unto him, How went the matter? I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, That the people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are fallen and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and, lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and called unto me. And I answered, Here am I. And he said unto me, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said unto me again, Stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him, and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them hither unto my Lord. 2 Samuel 1:3-10. Is this Amalekite speaking the truth? Or did he come upon the body of Saul and, finding him dead, take the crown and bracelet and bring them to David? I am of the opinion that when this Amalekite found Saul, after he had fallen on his sword, he was still alive. When this Amalekite came by, Saul asked him to finish the job. The interesting thing is that this young man confessed to David what he had done, and it sounds as though he expected David to give him a medal for his deed and put him on a life pension. Then David took hold on his clothes, and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him, and they mourned, and wept, and fasted until even, for Saul, and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. And David said unto the young man that told him, Whence art thou? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite. And David said unto him, How wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thine hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? 2 Samuel 1:11-14. If this man did slay Saul, It was because Saul had disobeyed God when he refused to slay all of the Amalekites back in the book of 1 Samuel. Had Saul obeyed God, this man would not have been alive to kill him, and perhaps Saul would have survived. David asked this young man how it was that he was unafraid to touch the Lord's anointed. David, you remember, would not take Saul's life even though he had opportunity. It is well sometimes to see things from God's viewpoint. As long as Saul was king, David would not touch him. No one else had better touch him either, because God is the one who put the crown on his head, and God should be the one to take it off when the time comes. There is danger in interfering with God's work. I could tell you some very interesting stories about folk who have attempted to interfere with God's work, God's program, and God's man. God moves in and judges. He has always done it. That is why David said to this young Amalekite, "Weren't you afraid to stretch forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" And David called one of the young men, and said, "Go near, and fall upon him." And he smote him that he died. 2 Samuel 1:15. David judged the Amalekite for touching the Lord's anointed. And David said unto him, "Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth hath testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed." 2 Samuel 1:16. If this man made up his story and confession, it certainly was a fatal thing to do. David told him, "If you have lied to me, then your blood is upon you, because you confess that you killed the Lord's anointed." I believe the young man really did kill Saul. He did what David would never have done, and David judged him for it. And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son, 2 Samuel 1:17. David's grief for Saul and Jonathan is revealed here, and it is genuine. Also he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher. 2 Samuel 1:18. Saul had taught Israel something. He made a contribution. You see, the Israelites had no iron weapons of war, so Saul taught them to be bowmen. The bow and arrow was a formidable weapon. Many of our ancestors would testify to that. The Indians used the bow and arrow to hold back their enemies and win many battles. The beauty of Israel is slain upon thy high places. How are the mighty fallen? 2 Samuel 1:19. His lamentation is written in the poetic form which came so naturally to the sweet psalmist of Israel. Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Askelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. 2 Samuel 1:20. Tell it not in Gath. Gath was the capital of the Philistines. Publish it not in the streets of Askelon. Ashkelon is in the Gaza Strip and is one of the 5 cities of the Philistines. Ye mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew, neither let there be rain, upon you, nor fields of offerings, for there the shield of the mighty is vilely cast away, the shield of Saul, as though he had not been anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. 2 Samuel 1:21-22. No one could say that either Saul or Jonathan was a coward. Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet, with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. 2 Samuel 1:23-24. Saul had brought prosperity to the land. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thine high places. 2 Samuel 1:25. David and Jonathan were bosom friends. They loved each other. David's grief is sincere. I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. 2 Samuel 1:26. It is interesting that David says, passing the love of women, because he was married to Jonathan's sister. Later we will find that she betrays David. I think Michal loved him as a hero in the beginning, but the day came when she despised him. David was not very successful in his love affairs. Abigail is the only noble woman that I have found in his retinue. I disagree with those who think Bathsheba was outstanding. I do not think she was. Although his relations with her were absolutely David's sin, and God judged him for it, why was she parading around on the roof like that? David had his problems with women, But he could say of Jonathan that he was a man who was true and loyal to him unto death. It is interesting to note that the men who were David's followers were loyal to him through thick and thin. He had that charisma which caused his men to stick with him. David was that type of man. How are the mighty fallen, and the weapons of war perished? 2 Samuel 1:27. This is a tremendous tribute to Jonathan in particular. David's grief over the deaths of Saul and Jonathan is touching. It is one of the most striking lamentations in the Word of God. We are going to see in the next chapter that David is made king over Judah. We will also meet Abner, who was Saul's captain. Now, not all of Saul's sons had been killed, though all of them that fought in the battle were killed. But Saul had a younger son named Ishbosheth. Abner made him king over the 11 remaining tribes and, of course, civil war broke out. David defeated Abner and the army, and after a long civil war had weakened the nation, David finally became king of all 12 tribes. He made Hebron his home at first. Later he moved to Mount Zion in Jerusalem, which was the place that he loved above all others. We are coming to a section that is historical. Although many people find it uninteresting, we are going to find some of the most thrilling accounts in the entire Word of God in this section. Also, we will find some marvelous spiritual lessons there.